Being here with you, I take the liberty or the opportunity to say a few words before I start with my presentation. Looking around, I'm very happy to see so many familiar faces which I have worked with for almost a decade, as the younger ones may not know that I started to work here in Hungary in the year 95, and I had an excellent period of working in Hungary for some 5 years as director of our office then in Budapest, and the university work, and especially work here with colleagues in Pécs, but at the same time in Budapest, in Szeged and in Debrecen, it was actually more than a pleasure. I learned a lot, and I think what I learned there later was very, very important in my future work. I'm with DVV now for some 35 years, which is a substantial period of my life. And when I was starting the work with DVV, I had the opportunity to be responsible for some of our work in Asia and Africa. So I've always been interested to look beyond Europe. I had always an interest in comparative studies. I wrote my PhD on adult education in Tanzania. I was awarded an honorary doctorate here at this university for my involvement in comparative studies and cooperation on a global level. And now I'm teaching at the Royal University in Phnom Penh, again, comparative studies in the master's program. And you will later see how deeply that I try to understand the different regions in the world. So, when I was thinking and listening earlier, that's always the opportunity and the challenge. If you are speaking, coming closer to the end, it's always a chance to do a little bit of a reaction to what has been said. And when my good colleague Uwe Gartenschläger, our vice director from Bonn, and he himself is a symbol of what we call our rotating system. Not that we are only rotating in everyday's work and working and trying to understand what's going on globally and in different projects, but he himself worked in St. Petersburg for several years. He joined us in headquarters. He went to Uzbekistan, worked for Central Asia. Now he's our vice director, and I have heard somehow, somewhere, that he may move to a new position as well. So don't be so surprised to see me back here in Pécs, although I'm currently living in Laos, but we had a very interesting conference on lifelong learning in Denmark, coming back to that later, so that took me here to come to Pécs. So this changing of roles to be a small or big bureaucrat in headquarters, and then for some time to go out and try to apply what you have learned in the field, I think that has been the challenge for DVV, and I can tell you it's not always easy. And I give you a few teasers, I may call it, about the situation in Asia, then you will see what Uwe Gartenschläger was saying earlier, that Europe is a construct. Then definitely, let's be very, very honest, Asia is even a larger construct, and if we sometimes use the phrases of UNESCO where they just talk about Asia Pacific, sometimes I wonder whether they know what they are talking about. As later we will see in the figures, we are talking to almost 2/3 of the world population. A final remark, I will only give a few remarks, but our good colleagues earlier, she was pointing to YouTube. So please have a look at the film on non-formal education in Laos, PDR, People's Democratic Republic. You just go on to non-formal education in Lao PDR on YouTube, then you have the chance to see a short film of 3 minutes and another one of 10 minutes. And then you may want to dig deeper in getting an understanding what it really means to live and work in Lao PDR. A final remark at the beginning, I think I appreciated very much, and that is from several of those who presented, what I sometimes call the golden triangle to adult education. And of course the golden triangle with all the opium in the triangle of Myanmar, Laos and Cambodia has a significant different meaning. But the golden triangle, as it was mentioned earlier today several times, I think it is one of the big learnings of myself in this country, that we cannot do it alone. We have to do it together. We have to work with government. We have to work with civil society in the NGOs and the local level, and we need the professional organizations like the universities. And there is a second, what I may call golden triangle, and that is we need the triangle of policy, of legislation, of financing. And it will never work, and we should continue to fight with our governments if they ask us to do adult education, which is the majority of the population, without money, without structures, without professional people doing it. So I think this just as a few remarks at the beginning, although my time is running fast. But I thought to comment on a few points which were raised earlier that may lead to that I'm jumping, but you can all have, as I said earlier, the PowerPoint, you can have a look at the film, so there's a good chance for you to follow up. What is this? Okay, I mentioned my interest in comparative studies. Let us always be clear, there are differences, there are similarities, there are commonalities, and if we talk about comparing Europe and Asia and comparing adult education in Europe and Asia, actually let's be very, very careful whether there is anything to compare, or whether the differences are so huge and the history so different that it is difficult to talk about differences. So let's be a bit closer to similarities when we talk about this. But there's one debate which is now very strong here in Europe and at the same time in Asia, and that's the discussion on lifelong learning. And when some of the presenters earlier were saying whether they want to present in English or in Hungarian, I of course thought, should I present in English or Hungarian? Because I still remember all the good words of elitosik, tartu tanulás, and whether it's felnot kipzes or felnet nivelés or whatever. So I thought this debate on what is skills really in the understanding of today's world for the future, and how we place skills and the measurement of all the competencies and the qualifications within the different frameworks, and how do we make sure that adult education, non-formal education is part of those qualifications frameworks. I think that's the big challenge. Only very few figures about Asia. I think Arne was saying we are coming close to some 7 billion people in the world, so we have more than 4 of those in Asia. That's 61%. We have 293 of the so-called elderly. So I'm part of the elderly in that understanding, so those above the 64. So host to 53 million migrants, just believe, between the different Asian countries. And we have a figure of some 518 million illiterate youth and adults. However, this is figures for all of Asia and the Pacific. The countries I currently work predominantly with are completely different. They are very small, Laos has a population of some 6 and Shanghai some 14, and Cambodia some 14 million. And in the week before coming out here, I was a participant to the World Conference on TVET, Technical Vocation Education Training, which was in Shanghai, and Shanghai alone has some 20 million, which is more than the whole of Laos and Cambodia combined. And the latest figures which we heard from China, 2020 China will have more than 100 cities which have more than 1 million people, and about 20 of them around 20 to 30 million. So when we talk about Asia, let's be clear, there are similarities, but there are huge differences. One more remark on Laos, you will see it on the film. Laos has only 6 million people, but they hail from 49 different ethnic groups. So we have 49 different languages in Laos. So what a challenge for the education sector. How can you teach in 49 different languages pupils or students or participants in adult education in your institutions? The overall presentation was looking at some similarities and some areas of potential cooperation between Europe and Asia. So I concentrate on 3 only. So let me start with a little bit of a global concept in which we are all involved, and that's the Millennium Development Goals. We have 8 goals, and they're all related to poverty, gender, women, child mortality, areas which are high on the development agenda. And it's important, the money which DVV for the international work in Laos and Cambodia gets is from the German Development Ministry, so therefore the MDGs are important. But for the world, we have 8 goals, and the Lao government has added goal number 9. Because there's a huge legacy of the Vietnam War in Laos, that there are still today, whether we believe it or not, 80 million unexploded bombs in Laos, and on a daily level somebody is killed or children are hurt while they are playing in the forest or on the field when the farmers do their work. So that's an heritage of the Vietnam War of the 60s. So there are problems in some Asian countries which are quite different from anywhere in the world. We are now in the debate of, because the MDGs are related to the years 2000-2015, we have started to discuss globally what follows after 2015, and we are quite clear. We have an unfinished agenda. Most of what we wanted to achieve we did not achieve, but at the same time we have new needs and new opportunities. And I think that's the same for a global program which the world community, and I remember very well that 2000 I went to Dakar in Senegal, west of Africa, and we were struggling and we were fighting for a goal 3 and 4 to be included in the global agenda, and one which is closely related to the learning needs of all young people and adults in respect to skills, and the prevailing problem of literacy and illiteracy and functional illiteracy and continuing education. And we were struggling to get it in. We have it in, but if we look at the global monitoring reports which are coming out from UNESCO every year, we realize that's the same. That especially in the area of youth and adults, we may even call that the agenda is not only unfinished. In some areas we may say it has not even really started. If we look at the global financial inputs into goal 3 by the big financial agencies in the world, or in your own country, Hungary, when I was looking at the figures now for youth and adult education in the presenter a minute ago, I think there's still a lot to do it. And maybe we have to struggle that it is not only education for all, which in the interpretation was schooling for all, but maybe we have to struggle for a concept of lifelong learning for all. Coming to some of the work which DVV is doing, I said I'll look briefly at 3 areas of potential cooperation between Europe and Asia. So DVV, we have our office still in Tashkent. We have this office in Vientiane. Regional offices have the opportunity that we can work from one country in neighboring country additionally, so that we can do networking and cooperation, we can have professional exchange, and of course search for additional funding for ever-growing needs and get involved in a common framework for monitoring and evaluation. Lao PDR, I will just skip and invite you to have a look at the film, then you will be much closer to our thematic areas, which are priorities there. You see the golden triangle, we work with government, we work with university, and we work with the civil society sector. And this is only one of the areas, the basic education, literacy and non-formal learning. We did a baseline survey recently in some villages close to the Vietnamese border, and we realized that not even half of the population really was on that level functional literate, so there's a lot to do. We do additionally work on the regional level. There is the, well, I sometimes call it the sister of the European Association. There's the Asian South Pacific Association of Adult and Basic Education. We have certain thematic initiatives. I was talking about policy, legislation, financing. There is university education and training. There is the VET area, and of course an ever-growing concern, what we call climate, so all what we do in environmental education. When I said, and now we are moving to a second area, it's not only the bilateral which we are doing from Germany, but we are supporting the regional work here. A short look back to ASBE. ASBE is not just as old as the EAA, which is now, I think, established in '53. So ASBE came a decade later, was established in 1964. They have certain areas and strategic partnerships, and I think DVV on that level is proud to be one of their global partners, and we cooperate with them just like we do with the EAEA in several areas. One is that it's a little bit similar like any of the other non-formal actors. We have to come closer to the area of TVET, so that we look closer into life skills for youth, and they have done so with 2 major initiatives. Now let's jump into the third area of potential cooperation. You see here an interesting group of youngsters of civil society as we are having, and that's I think what Arne touched upon in his presentation earlier. There is a very important process, and that is the ASEM, the Asia-European meeting, which was started as ASEAN, as the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations, and the European Union. So 10 countries from ASEAN and the 27 from Europe. But now, major players in the region for Asia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Pakistan, they all have joined. And on the European side, it is Russia and others. If you want to know more, just touch on the ASEM Education Ministers Secretariat, which is currently in the Bonn Ministry of Education, moving to Indonesia next year. And one of the reasons why I just mentioned it is that this year, for the first time, let it call it my current home city, Vientiane in Laos, is the host to the ASEM summit, where all heads of state, including the head of state of Hungary and of Germany, will come to Laos, hopefully, and from all the Asian countries. But it is not only that the heads of states are meeting, but at the same time there is a people-to-people exchange, and I would be very happy to say hello to colleagues, to people from Europe, for professionals, as we have agreed with the REPF Secretariat to run at least 2 or 3 workshops, one on lifelong learning, one on skills, and one on climate training and environmental education, so that really we have a professional exchange and a people-to-people exchange, and this again is in Laos. So, coming to the end, I think the work, as I said right from the start, if you look at the comparative and the areas of the cooperation, you may encounter more problems than you may expect, so the challenges are sometimes bigger than the chances. But I think as we see that the world is coming closer together, the challenges of globalization and especially between Europe and Asia is getting stronger. Let's look and really maybe even do some research in getting an understanding what are the wider benefits of cooperation and exchange. And I think only from there we can learn to get an understanding of what is needed and what is wanted. And then let us join hand with the partners in our own countries, and let us stronger cooperate on the regional level in research comparatively and cooperation projects between Europe and Asia. And I think on that level more information is needed. So thank you, Köszönöm szépen, Kopchai Lalai, that is the Lao word for thank you very much, and the nice yellow flower we had from last month in April. We have Lao New Year, Pimai Lao, and exactly on the day these beautiful yellow flowers started. So thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers. I enjoyed it heavily to learn so much from your end. Thank you.